exposed. The transformative truth behind procrastination that 9 out of 10 people never discover. Sarah's hands hovered over her desk, fingers trembling. The lesson plans for her third-grade class lay untouched. Each blank sheet a monument to her indecision. Each tick of the clock whispered accusations, louder than the laughter of her students down the hall. Had she failed them? The thought gripped her tight, suffocating. She was 34, a school teacher in a small Midwestern town, and she felt like a ghost in her own life, drifting aimlessly between the fading hopes left to her by her parents, their legacy of hard work and community spirit heavy like a stone in her chest. The frustrated murmur of self-doubt collided with the familiar absence of drive she battled daily. Grading became a mountain too steep to climb, and her dreams of fostering a love for learning were slipping through her fingers like dry sand. "You're not enough," the voice in her head hissed, as familiar as her morning coffee. The once vibrant glimmer of passion for teaching felt obscured beneath layers of hesitation and fear. With 3 children counting on her steady income, the weight of responsibility bore down even harder. How could she confront her fears when the day-to-day grind left her feeling paralyzed? And then, it happened. The unexpected loss of her grandmother shattered her fragile world. Grief curled around her, a constant companion that dulled everything around her. Tucked away in the attic, she discovered the old journal, its pages yellowed and worn. Each entry revealed strength, resilience, a path through uncertainty. In those heartfelt reflections, she rediscovered her grandmother's unwavering belief in fighting for what mattered. Sarah's heart clenched painfully as she read, realizing how far she had drifted from that spirit. Before she knew it, Sarah found herself reaching out to Mrs. Jenkins, the retired teacher known for her sage advice and nurturing warmth. Their meetings transformed into lifelines, restoring color to her faded resolve. But just as she began to muster the courage to start anew, a newly enforced policy came crashing down at the school. It threatened the very resources that her students relied on. A wave of panic shot through her. This was bigger than bureaucratic nuisances. This was about her students thriving or withering under unjust circumstances. The decision weighed heavily on her conscience. "You can't ignore this," she murmured, caught in a tug-of-war between her instincts and the practical flutter of fear at job security. Should she speak up and fight for her students, honor her grandmother's teachings, and risk everything she had built? Her mind raced, thoughts tangled like veins in a storm. What if it costs me my job? Heart thundering in her chest, she scanned the faces of her students that day, innocent, hopeful and full of potential. Those faces stared back at her, demanding a commitment she felt unworthy to give. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Her heart raced as she found herself standing before the school board, the tension palpable in the stuffy room. Fear suffocated her, yet beneath it flickered something deeper, a rush of empowerment ignited by her grandmother's words. What would she choose? To honor her legacy, or protect her own security? The walls of the auditorium closed in, her breathing quickening as the moment approached. This was the battle she did not plan for. A fight that pulled at her soul, ricocheting back to every hope she held, leaving Sarah unmoored and unsure. Desperation clawed at her, entwined with a glimmer of determination. One stand could change everything, but would she find the power within her? Or would she sink into silence? As Sarah stood before the school board, her palms sweating against the cool wooden podium, she felt acutely aware of every pair of eyes focused on her. The whispered discussion surrounding her faded into silence, replaced by an inner dialogue that screamed louder than the murmurs of the audience. If you speak, you risk everything. Yet what chased those doubts away was the vivid memory of her grandmother's fiery spirit, urging her to fight for what was right. In that moment, a sense of clarity pierced through the haze of fear. The policy being discussed, one that would strip her students of essential resources, felt like an affront not only to her role as an educator but to the community she cherished. She remembered those hopeful faces, the eager nods and the laughter that filled her classroom. These kids deserve better, she thought, Her resolve hardening with a deep breath, Sarah began to speak, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. I want to address the implications of this policy on our students' education. Waves of tension rolled off the board members as they shifted uncomfortably, and she watched as some exchanged glances, challenging their disdain with the conviction building within her that as she elaborated on the resource cuts, she felt a strange buoyancy rising in her chest. It wasn't just about her own job security. It was about the futures of her students. With each point she made, she unearthed the passion she thought she had lost forever. Her words, no longer mere whispers of fear, became a manifesto of hope. The faces around her morphed, disbelief giving way to contemplation. However, as she continued, a voice interrupted a senior board member known for his strict views on policy. Sarah, you are a teacher. We appreciate your passion, but this is a financial decision, not personal. His dismissive tone felt like a slap, threatening to dismantle the delicate rise of her confidence. But with each insult, Sarah felt a newfound tenacity invigorate her. She wouldn't let her voice be silenced again. You're right. It's not personal to you. But it is to us. You're overlooking the human element here, the impact on these children. She made eye contact with a few board members, seeking connection, hoping to ignite any flicker of empathy. The tension shifted, giving rise to skepticism mingled with curiosity. Each moment of silence stretched dangerously, filling the air with raw psychology, her vulnerability. She saw the fear behind the board members' eyes as they recognized that what was at stake wasn't just numbers on a spreadsheet, but the future of every student in the room. With an unusual grit, Sarah outlined alternatives, offering creative solutions rather than merely pointing out problems. Her thoughts flowed freely now, each suggestion bolstering her sense of purpose and illustrating her commitment to education. Yet, as her fervor mounted, so did the weight of reality. Could this be enough? What if she lost her position despite pouring her heart out? The stakes had never felt higher. Facing the board, Sarah felt a crack of doubt seep in amidst her courage. Her hands shook slightly as she wrapped up. In light of our responsibility as educators, I urge you to reconsider this policy. Our students deserve a chance of future. The air was thick, silence radiating as they mulled over her words. As the meeting adjourned, she left the auditorium with no clear sense of victory, but a growing belief that she had turned a critical corner. The internal conflict remained, half of her heart urging her to believe that change was possible, while the other half feared impending backlash. Days passed, dragging like molasses as Sarah awaited the board's response. Then the phone rang, jolting her from the half-focused haze she had returned to. The voice on the other end was crisp, carrying both news and uncertainty. Ms. Bennett, we need to discuss your proposal. Can you meet us tomorrow? A million thoughts raced through her mind as realization struck. Their deliberation was more than just policy. It had now become personal. Would she emerge with the changes she so desperately sought? Or would this be the moment her career teetered on the edge? The consequences of her stance were about to echo throughout her life, but there was one certainty amidst the chaos. She was ready to face whatever came next. The day arrived with the gray clouds hanging ominously, mirroring Sarah's trepidation. She stared out the window, the drumming of rain against the panes serving as a backdrop to the chaotic flutter of thoughts in her mind. Each second felt like an eternity, each tick of the clock amplifying her anxiety. What direction would this meeting take? Would it affirm her courage or unravel the fragile hopes she had nurtured since that fateful board meeting? As she made her way to the school, anticipation churned inside her like a storm. The very idea of discussing her proposal felt almost surreal. Each step she took weighed down by the duality of hope and fear. Her stomach churned with the possibility of backlash but also with the exhilarating notion that she could forge change upon arriving. She was directed to a small conference room where 3 board members were already seated, their expressions unreadable. Sarah's heart raced as she took her place, her professionalism battling the cascade of nerves threatening to topple her resolve. She rehearsed her words in her mind. This is for the students, she reminded herself, grounding her focus amidst the chaos. Ms. Bennett, thank you for coming, said the chairperson, a man with an untrusting gaze. We really want to discuss your suggestions. Sarah nodded, her voice momentarily stuck in her throat. This was her chance to elevate the conversation from mere numbers to human stories. Yet beneath that determination, gnawing doubts crept in. What if they just dismissed her again? With a moment's respite, she took a breath and began her presentation. Each focus point was meticulously prepared, but her heart led her where the facts sometimes did not. These cuts, she asserted, will have a detrimental impact on our students, especially those who already struggle. We owe it to them to provide as many resources as possible, the chairperson interjected, but the budget does not allow for it. Our hands are tied. A familiar feeling of resistance surged through her, firing up her determination. It's true that funding is limited, she countered, but that doesn't mean we can abandon our duty to educate and nurture these young minds. If we work together to explore funding alternatives and community partnerships, we can make a tangible difference. For the first time, Sarah noticed the hint of intrigue in one of the board members' eyes. Who knew that her raw conviction could spark even a faint glimmer of interest? Morrison, one of the silent members, finally spoke. Can you provide examples of successful partnerships from other schools? We need evidence that this can work. Her pulse quickened. I can absolutely share several case studies, she replied, a newfound clarity sharpening her thoughts. She realized she was backing herself into a corner where her ideas needed solid grounding. An hour later, as the meeting concluded, Sarah felt a blend of exhaustion and exhilaration wash over her. Had she done enough? The board members leaned in closer, whispering amongst themselves, their furrowed brows suggesting deliberation rather than dismissal. Walking out of that room, Sarah embraced a difficult truth. She had presented her case with a sense of accumulated authority. Each tremor and shaky breath had been wrapped in layers of newfound confidence. There, amongst her doubts and fears, she recognized a truth about herself. She was a catalyst for change, harnessing all parts of her life experience toward a noble cause. As she stepped into the parking lot, clouds began to break, and patches of blue peeked through, a symbolic release. But with the sun struggling to shine, a sense of urgency enveloped her. What if the board didn't embrace her ideas? What if she faced opposition that she was not yet prepared to confront? The unease settled deep in her chest as she fished her phone out of her pocket to check for a response email. Nothing. A hollow feeling filled her at the silence, a reminder that doubt never fully disappears. And yet, she found solace in one undeniable fact. She had transformed her fears into action. Just then another message chimed, abruptly pulling her from her thoughts. An email from the board awaited her review, the subject line bold and unsettling. Proposal review, urgent meeting needed. A challenge lay ahead, and she was compelled to discover what awaited her next. Would she stand resolute, or would the tides of opposition prove too strong? Sarah stared at the email on her phone, her heartbeat echoing in her ears. The ominous subject line sent a thrill of anxiety cascading through her veins, but there was also an undeniable curiosity sparking within her. It was an opportunity, one that could lead to genuine change if she could rise to the challenge. As she settled into her car, she felt an urgency to prepare. She flipped open her laptop and began furiously researching successful funding strategies, pulling together examples that could bolster her argument. Each success story strengthened her resolve. She could effectively argue her case if she could back up her passion with concrete evidence. She was determined not to allow the board's previous dismissals to dim her spirit. Instead, she felt propelled forward. The prospect of the meeting loomed large, a shadow trailing her every thought, pushing her to delve deeper and challenge her intellect. Every keystroke resonated with her growing tenacity. However, a creeping voice whispered fears in the back of her mind. What if her efforts fell flat? What if the statistics didn't sway the board? She had felt the warmth of tentative agreement before, but now the potential for rejection seemed to darken her exhilarating high. She inhaled sharply, recognizing that these thoughts were part of the journey toward change. She had to confront the turmoil head-on. The next morning she arrived early, her heart racing as she revisited her notes in the empty conference room. The same table where she had first pitched her ideas now felt like a battleground. Her heartbeat quickened with every deliberative breath. She could feel the weight of anticipation pressing on her shoulders, challenging her to embrace the pressure as the board members filed in. Their faces were inscrutable, but Sarah was determined to maintain eye contact. She had to project confidence, even amid the storm of nerves. The chairperson's icy demeanor made her pulse quicken, but she remained resolute. She rehearsed her points silently in her mind, weaving the narratives of the students in her head, individual lives that were at stake. When she launched into her presentation, there was a fresh urgency in her voice. I understand the budget constraints, but I believe we can create opportunities rather than limitations, she stated, setting a tone of collaboration. We can explore grants that are specifically tailored for educational resources and establish mentorships with local businesses that are vested in community development. The board leaned closer and Sarah seized the moment. She spoke passionately, layering her statistics with heartfelt anecdotes from her experiences. Each example painted a picture of tangible benefits, bringing her vision alive in front of them. Yet that same voice of doubt lingered on the edge of her thoughts, a fear that nagged at her confidence. Then Morrison, the member whose interest had flickered before, interjected again. What contingency plans do you have if these partnerships fail? Can you ensure long-term sustainability? Her stomach twisted in knots. They wanted assurance, a guarantee that her ideas weren't just idealistic. The question required not just data but strategy, the kind of strategic thinking she had always felt challenged to master. Forcing her hands to unclench, she replied, I believe that partnerships can evolve. If we remain flexible and receptive to feedback, we can adapt our approaches and ensure that the programs serve both our students and community effectively. The negotiation that unfolded revealed not just professional stakes but a deeply personal reckoning. Who was she without these ideas? The board's skepticism felt like a mirror to her own uncertainties. Yet, with each challenge she felt emboldened to push through, channeling her energy into advocating not just for resources but for the potential of every student. As the meeting wrapped, Sarah's heart swelled with a mix of hope and uncertainty. Had she managed to shift the board's perspective? Had she convinced them to see beyond the numbers? Their deliberations held no immediate clarity. Their expressions remained enigmatic. Stepping back into the sunlight, the air felt heavier, charged with possibility. She wasn't just fighting for funding. She was embracing her role as a bearer of change. But as she pulled out her phone to check for an immediate response, a sudden grave realization seized her. What if she had let her nerves overshadow her capacity for strategic thinking? The looming promise of next steps drew her attention forward, the duality of her fears intertwining with the burgeoning sense of empowerment. The stakes felt higher than ever, and as the day unfolded, she sensed that something pivotal was on the horizon, a confrontation that would define her evolution. With determination she pushed onward, her mind racing with strategies. But doubt clung. What if her preparations were insufficient? What awaited her in this decisive next encounter could either fortify her resolve or unravel her hard-won confidence. Sarah took a deep breath, the morning sun pouring through her kitchen window, casting a warm glow over her neatly arranged notes. The uncertainty that had punctuated her thoughts yesterday felt like a distant echo. The board meeting had shifted something within her. She was no longer just Sarah, the educator with a dream. No, now she was Sarah, a strategist, a conqueror of self-doubt. That revelation invigorated her, swaying her mind away from old patterns of procrastination that had previously dictated her pace. Fueled by this new resolve, she decided to take charge of her day. The timeline for the next steps had been uncertain, but she would not let that disempower her. Instead, she began crafting a detailed plan. This would involve reaching out to stakeholders she had identified during her preparation. Each contact would bring her closer to solidifying her vision, systematically dismantling her earlier hesitations about accountability. As Sarah dove deeper into this process, she felt the thrill of tangible progress. Her fingers danced over the keyboard as she composed emails, seeking meetings with local businesses and organizations. Her heart raced not with anxiety but with anticipation. Each click felt like a step toward fortifying her proposals with real-world connections. She was actively engaging with the world outside the boardroom, making her mark before the formal discussions resumed. Later in the day, Sarah found herself pacing through the living room, the bright sunlight illuminating the space. She had invited a trusted colleague, Rachel, for coffee to discuss her strategies. Rachel had always been a sounding board, a friend who could provide insight without judgment. Let us brainstorm, Rachel suggested after Sarah recounted her meeting experiences and emerging plans. You've got the concepts. Now let us talk about the presentation itself. How can you ensure the board understands not just the numbers but the passion? Together they pored over information, sketching diagrams of potential partnerships that could underscore Sarah's vision. It was collaborative, charged with possibility. This was how Sarah envisioned the future, an intersection of ideas smoothed by clear communication and shared ambitions. The insights that Rachel offered forced Sarah to reassess how she framed her statistics. She realized that the numbers were essential, but they would only resonate when tied back to personal narratives, the real stories of students' lives transformed by educational opportunities. As the afternoon faded, clarity began to emerge. Sarah felt a burgeoning confidence. She finally recognized that her timeline for change did not depend entirely on the board's approval, but on her actions now. She could harness this energy, channeling it into creating meaningful relationships rather than awaiting validation from others. Yet, as she reflected, a kernel of doubt still whispered in her mind. It wasn't external anymore, but rather an inner dialogue. What if she was diving into this too hastily? What if she outpaced her preparation, ultimately leading to failure? Her breathing quickened at the thought, but she pushed the feelings aside. Action was now her antidote to fear. With renewed determination, Sarah took a leap, arranging a lunch with the local business leaders she had thought of earlier. They would provide not only mentorship but also potential funding through scholarships. This was more than networking. It was a way to embed her ambitions within the community fabric. However, as she sent those emails, the clock ticked down on her expectations. She knew that relationships took time to nurture. She was testing her resolve, pushing boundaries she had once hesitated to approach. That courage became the foundation of her transformation. As she put her phone down, Sarah embraced a paradox. She was learning that the answers to her challenges weren't merely residing in policies or figures, but lay within the connections she was forging. Yet, a part of her still wrestled with the fear that without the board's approval, her advances might crumble. The moment of realization struck her. Perhaps this journey was less about the board's acceptance, and more about her asserting herself as a leader capable of driving change. Just as this thought anchored her, a notification pinged on her phone, an email alert. Her heart raced with both excitement and apprehension. She hesitated. Who was the email from? What new challenges or opportunities awaited her with this unexpected correspondence? As Sarah clicked on the email notification, a tingling sense of urgency swept over her. Her heart pounded, and she momentarily forgot about the strategies she had been crafting. The need to face this unexpected communication overwhelmed her earlier doubts, forcing her to confront a new reality that could potentially disrupt all she had been building. It was from a local businesswoman, Claire Davis, a name she recognized from her research. Claire had an admirable reputation for advocating educational initiatives, and her company had implemented several scholarship programs in the area. The email subject line read, "Exciting opportunity for collaboration." With a mix of trepidation and anticipation, Sarah opened it. Claire expressed interest in a preliminary discussion about ways their organizations could work together to create sustainable educational programs for underserved students. The mention of her educational goals didn't just fill Sarah with excitement. It ignited a fire within. This was the moment she had hoped for. A direct line to someone who might help pave the way toward her vision. Yet, as thrilling as it was, it also brought a wave of self-doubt crashing through her. What if she wasn't prepared for this? Her mind raced with thoughts that tugged at her confidence. Had she really thought through her objectives? Would Claire see her as a legitimate partner? The familiar discomfort of inner conflict surfaced, challenging her newfound resolve. But Sarah quickly refocused. Hesitation had been her past. Action was her present. Taking a deep breath, she shifted her thoughts from anxiety to preparation. Her hands flew over the keyboard as she crafted a response, filled with excitement and clarity. Sarah took the time to list out her ideas succinctly, proposing a meeting where they could brainstorm possibilities in detail. She noted the importance of shared aspirations and tangible goals, elements she recognized as crucial from her previous discussions with Rachel. Sending the email, Sarah felt lighter, almost liberated. Each step she took pushed her toward accountability, but it also reinforced her deeper understanding. It was not about being perfect or even being ready, but about being willing to engage. With this revelation, she sensed the weight of her anxiety diminish. In the days that followed, anticipation brewed as she prepared for the meeting with Claire. However, the lurking voice of self-doubt sometimes resurfaced, questioning her credibility. She found herself pacing the living room, the sunlight streaming in and highlighting her unfinished plans. Gone were the days when doubt dictated her actions. She was no longer letting fear control her narrative. During a pre-meeting conversation with Rachel, Sarah couldn't help but voice her lingering fears. What if Claire takes one look at my proposals and thinks I'm inadequate? Her voice betrayed her confidence, even as she sought reassurance. Rachel, with her innate ability to uplift, responded, "Believe in the value you offer. You're bringing experiences to the table that matter. Your passion is your greatest credential." Those words acted as lifebuoys to the tumultuous sea of doubt swirling in Sarah's mind. They grounded her in the reality that her passion and experiences were invaluable assets, not just statistics in a chart. As the scheduled meeting approached, she felt a shift within herself, a determination that drowned the restlessness of anxiety. Each moment leading to the meeting was no longer about fear of judgment but rather a desire to share her vision, a narrative she had begun to weave with conviction. And then on the day of the meeting, as she stood in front of the mirror adjusting her blouse, she caught a glimpse of someone ready to face challenges head-on. The bravado she had lacked was now palpable. With every intention in her heart, she reminded herself, today is about forging connections, not about proving myself. Just as she gathered her notes and prepared to leave, another email alert popped up on her phone. Sarah glanced at it, her breath catching in her throat. The subject line read, "Important feedback on your proposal." Who had given feedback? What did they think? The thrill of anticipation coursed through her veins, drowning her thoughts in a wave of potential outcomes. Did this mark a new chapter in her journey? Or would it serve as a test of her determination? The rush of adrenaline surged through Sarah's body. Every part of her felt electrified by the possibilities. Yet as she stared at the screen, a flood of apprehension rushed in to contend with the excitement. What if the feedback was negative? What if all her efforts had been in vain? She gripped the edge of her desk, a sense of urgency battling against her hesitation. Taking a deep breath, she tore her gaze from the message long enough to gather her thoughts. Today's meeting with Claire was pivotal, and while her proposal would surely take center stage, she couldn't ignore the looming specter of that unanswered email. With a resigned sigh, she opted to focus first on the task at hand. Arriving at the cafe where she was to meet Claire, Sarah's surroundings provided a semblance of calm. The gentle hum of voices and the rich aroma of coffee created an atmosphere that quelled the storm within. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling that, despite the comforting chaos around her, her own thoughts remained disordered. As Claire arrived, Sarah was struck by her poise. The businesswoman carried herself with a confidence that radiated authority. When their eyes met, Sarah felt the weight of expectation, or perhaps just the pressure she placed upon herself. They exchanged pleasantries and soon, over steaming cups of coffee, the conversation shifted toward the heart of the collaboration. Claire's enthusiasm was palpable, and as she spoke about her previous initiatives, Sarah found it harder to concentrate on her own ideas. Shadows of doubt crept back into her mind. Was she experienced enough? Did she truly have anything worthwhile to offer? But just as these thoughts threatened to consume her, she recalled Rachel's words, the importance of her own passion and experiences. With newfound clarity, Sarah leaned in, allowing her voice to steady. She shared her vision with fervor. She articulated not only what she hoped to achieve, but also the personal reasons behind her ambition to create sustainable educational programs. As the dialogue unfolded, Claire responded with genuine interest, probing deeper into Sarah's intentions. They exchanged ideas and Sarah felt herself grow more animated, her self-doubt dissipating as their discussion illuminated common goals. A synergy began to take shape, and for the first time, Sarah realized she wasn't just a participant in this conversation. She was a collaborator. Then, unexpectedly, Claire shifted the conversation to Sarah's proposal. "I'm genuinely intrigued," she said. "But I noticed you hadn't included specific metrics for success or a timeline. How do you envision measuring your impact?" The question hit like a cold wave, and Sarah's earlier discomfort returned. In that instant she faced a crucial decision. Would she falter, overwhelmed by her perceived inexperience, or would she confront the challenge head-on? Her heart raced but steadied as she embraced the moment. "That's a fair point," Sarah responded, her voice gaining strength. "I realized I could expand on that, presenting how we can adapt and adjust as we evaluate our initiatives. As she spoke, Sarah felt a transformation unfold within her. Each word became a foundation stone for her confidence. She wasn't simply defending her proposal. She was enhancing it in real time. The tension of the earlier feedback faded into the background. She was optimizing her concept right here, right now. With Claire nodding approvingly, Sarah's smile widened. The realization hit her: this was not just about the project anymore. It was a pivotal moment in her personal and professional growth. They continued to discuss, and every response she gave shifted her perception of who she could become. Yet, just as the meeting concluded on a hopeful note, Sarah's phone buzzed on the table. The email awaited her attention. Important feedback on your proposal. As Claire wrapped up her thoughts, the buzz of anticipation resurfaced, reminding her that the cycle of self-evaluation wasn't over. What awaited her behind that email could redefine her journey once again. The moment had come for Sarah to confront her biggest challenge yet. Would she view feedback as yet another stake in her journey, or as a potential opening for her next leap forward? As Sarah walked back to her apartment, the clamor of the cafe still echoed in her mind. Her meeting with Claire had ignited a spark of determination, yet her stomach churned with anticipation of the email she hadn't opened. Each step forward felt heavy, weighed down by the anticipation of external judgment. It was a familiar feeling, one she had battled before, a blend of anxiety and self-doubt that threatened her burgeoning confidence. Sitting at her cluttered kitchen table, she hesitated once more, staring at the glowing screen of her laptop. Each second felt extended, amplifying the tension that wedged itself between self-encouragement and fear. Finally, she exhaled, closed her eyes, and imagined the sense of relief that could wash over her. With a sharp inhale, she opened the email. The first sentence struck her like a hammer. "We appreciate your work, but we have concerns about the feasibility of your timeline." A wave of disbelief surged through her. Criticism felt intimate, as if it had pried open the door to her vulnerability and exposed her to ridicule. She read on, noting feedback ranging from logistical reservations to suggestions for more concrete benchmarks. Each point pricked at her confidence. But this time, instead of succumbing to despair, she paused, tracing the disconnect between her emotions and the craftsmanship of her proposal. Claire's earlier encouragement echoed in her mind. This was a call to evolve, not a sentence to fail. Instinctively, she began to strategize. Perhaps they were right. She hadn't fully grasped the intricacies of operation timelines. Could that be the area needing clarity, rather than a personal shortfall? Sarah reached for a pen and a notepad, jotting down key points from the email. The act was cathartic, transforming panic into potential. Each concern became a puzzle piece that she could address, a way to build a stronger framework for her project. She dissected the feedback, feeling the power return as she considered solutions. She needed to clarify goals, so she sketched out a timeline, breaking down phases into manageable sections. As ideas began flowing, a transformation unfolded. Confidence surged, fueled by a sense of ownership over her work. It wasn't just the goal of her proposal that mattered anymore. It was the act of combating self-doubt through preparation and clarity. Continually reassessing her abilities brought new insights. For the first time, she acknowledged that her initial approach to the proposal had mirrored her apprehension. Vague and unfocused, with the notes cluttering her table, Sarah saw the potential pathways rediscovered through thought and reflection. This wasn't merely about receiving feedback. It was a matter of resilience, of viewing potential pitfalls as stepping stones rather than obstacles. She leaned back in her chair, absorbing how this moment could shape her narrative, not just as a professional, but as someone committed to growing and adapting. Determined, she opened a new document, transforming her notes into a revised proposal. Each word felt grounded in honesty and intent. This was not a retreat from setbacks but a strategy for triumph. As she typed, Sarah realized she wasn't just responding to Claire's feedback. She was crafting a roadmap for herself, anchoring her professional development in self-awareness and perseverance. Finished, she looked at the clock. Hours had evaporated, but they had passed in a blur of creativity and focus. She had not just improved her proposal. She had redefined her readiness to tackle criticism. A newfound resilience had emerged, solidifying her identity as both a leader and a learner. Yet even as the satisfaction of progress washed over her, the next challenge loomed. What if she now had to pitch this improved proposal not only to Claire but also to an unforeseen panel? That possibility hung in the air like mist, teasing both excitement and trepidation. A new reality awaited her, and she knew this was just the beginning of something much larger. The following morning, Sarah awoke with a sense of purpose coursing through her veins. This was a resolve she hadn't felt in ages. The sun streamed through the window, illuminating the revisited proposal spread across her kitchen table like a map leading to uncharted territory. She allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The draft was an embodiment of her growth, but she could not lose sight of the work ahead. Today's task was mounting, not only presenting her proposal but doing so with conviction. After a quick breakfast, Sarah sat fully dressed at her laptop, an unusual formality that seemed to bolster her mindset. She recognized the importance of being visible to herself, a stark contrast to her previous habits of dressing down during moments of vulnerability. Clarity began lining her thoughts as she lined up not just the content of her proposal, but the presentation itself. Here lay an opportunity to showcase not only her work but her evolution as a professional. As she rehearsed her main points, Sarah's mind wandered to the panel. Who were they? What qualifications did they bear? Anticipation gnawed at her. Her instinct was to brace for confrontation, but instead, she chose to envision them as allies in her journey. She questioned herself. How could she connect her vision with their expectations? Each response could be a bridge rather than a barrier. Writing down her projected questions from the panel further steeled her resolve. Would they assume she would crumble under pressure? Could she wield her newfound confidence to redirect that expectation? The thought spurred a deeper determination. She would use their reservations as a springboard, demonstrating her understanding of their concerns with meticulous, market-minded solutions. In preparing her visual aids, she found comfort in the act of creation. Colors were chosen intentionally: blue for trust, green for growth. Each graphic reflected not only data, but a story, her story, one of challenge, reflection, and rebirth. It became a tangible representation of her internal battle, triumphing over procrastination and self-doubt. What once had been vague notions evolved into concrete possibilities. Yet, as the clock ticked relentlessly closer to the meeting time, nerves swelled within her. The once powerful motivation began morphing into uneasiness. What if they scrutinized her revisions? The fear crept back, whispering discontent about her worth, but she fought valiantly against it. Deep breath, grounding herself once again in not only what she had accomplished, but the iterative process that brought her here. Gathering her documents and notes, she stepped out of her apartment, feeling the cool air herald a newfound resolve. Navigating the bustling city streets, she reveled in the energy surrounding her. Each passerby was unknowingly urging her forward, an audience waiting to witness something transformative. Minutes later, she stood in front of the glass doors leading to the meeting room, her mind racing. For a fleeting moment, she questioned her decision to seek this path. The exposure felt daunting, almost vulnerable. But what would it mean to retreat now, after the progress she'd made? Instead, she leaned into the idea of authenticity. This was her opportunity to lay bare not just her plans, but her growth, her passion, her journey. Taking a final deep breath, she swung open the door, heart pounding in sync with intensity of the moment. The faces inside looked up, an array of expressions ranging from curious to analytical. "Good morning, everyone," she began, ready to unfold her vision. Yet as the presentation began, a sudden voice cut through. "Before we proceed, we need to determine how well you can handle our expectations. Can you truly meet them?" The atmosphere shifted, tension rising as Sarah felt the weight of judgment compress around her. This was the moment she had both prepared for and dreaded. How would she respond? Was she ready to embrace the truth of her capabilities, or would she falter under scrutiny? As each heartbeat echoed in Sarah's chest, she realized that this confrontation was not merely about defending her proposal. It was an invitation to step into her power, a vital moment to showcase the resilience she had cultivated through this journey. With a deep breath, she steadied her voice and replied, "I understand that expectations are high and I respect that. But I also believe that my proposal represents an opportunity to enact meaningful change, because it's rooted in the very challenges we face. Together we can strive for solutions." The board members leaned in, a subtle shift indicating that her words were resonating. For the first time, Sarah saw the potential of her ideas reflected in their eyes. She continued, weaving her narrative seamlessly into the concrete metrics she had developed. She outlined her specific benchmarks for success and illustrated her commitment to community engagement that would frame the resource initiatives. Each point she made was met with thoughtful nods, and with each nod, her confidence grew. In those moments, Sarah felt different, not just a teacher advocating for her students, but a calculated strategist presenting a compelling vision. Her mind was clear. She had moved past the girl who hesitated, paralyzed by self-doubt. She was well prepared, grounded in facts and fired by a relentless passion that left little room for fear. As she progressed through her presentation, she viewed the board as collaborators rather than critics. They were no longer an audience merely judging her abilities. They were the key stakeholders in the future of her students. "I want this to be a partnership," she emphasized, making eye contact. "Together, we have the power to not only tackle resource concerns, but also foster a more profound commitment to our community's education." Toward the climax of her presentation, the chairperson interjected, "Sarah, your approach is indeed compelling, but how would you adapt if certain aspects of your proposal don't go as planned?" A smile crept onto Sarah's lips. This was a chance to illustrate her growth. "I've learned through this process that adaptability is key. If certain partnerships falter, we'll reassess and pivot, ensuring that we remain aligned with our ultimate goal: to uplift our students." The conviction in her voice was unmistakable. She was no longer just expressing ideas, she was casting herself as a leader ready to embrace challenges and innovate. The discussion that followed was dynamic. Board members began to engage with her ideas, suggesting avenues and providing insights that she hadn't fully considered. This was collaboration in its finest form, and Sarah felt an exhilarating surge of accomplishment. When the meeting concluded, the chairperson announced, "Sarah, we appreciate your unwavering commitment. Expect changes in our budget allocation. Let us work together to finalize the details over the next few weeks." The breath she had been holding surged forth, releasing the weight of apprehension she had carried throughout the past months. The recognition she had long sought was no longer a question, it was a reality. Walking out of that room, Sarah felt an immense wave of fulfillment wash over her. She had not only paved the way for vital changes in her students' lives, but had also solidified her own identity as an educator with purpose and strategy. She had transformed her approach to challenges, viewing them as platforms for growth rather than obstacles to overcome. In the coming weeks, Sarah worked tirelessly alongside the board to finalize the proposal. As they implemented the initiatives, the impact rippled through the school and community, yet Sarah remained focused on her personal growth. She prioritized self-reflection, ensuring she continued to build on her newfound ability to confront fear with tenacity. One afternoon, while reviewing data on the early successes of their collaborations, Sarah received unexpected news from a local educational organization. They had recognized her as an Innovative Educator of the Year for her impactful work in advocating for resource equity in education. Surprised yet humbled, she felt a powerful sense of validation. This award was not just a trophy but a testament to the transformation of her belief in herself. Ultimately, Sarah stood tall, aware of her capabilities not just as an educator, but as an advocate, a strategist, and a leader. She had emerged from the depths of procrastination into a realm of intention, action, and accomplishment. This was the moment she had envisioned, the culmination of her struggles become a narrative of triumph. Now was the time for the audience to reciprocate their support. You need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that unfold. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and boost the reach of these inspiring tales. Comment your thoughts, reactions, and theories about Sarah's journey, and the lessons you can extract from her transformation. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this incredible conclusion and witness the power of personal growth and accountability. Don't wait even one more second, show your support now.